Hello everybody, my name is Ian Lives. Now today's video is going to be something I've been wanting to do for a while, which is this idea called If You Liked This, Watch This. It's going to be all horror movies. Basically, I'm going to be going through a movie that, if you've seen it and if you've liked it, I'm going to give you a suggestion of a movie that is along the lines has something similar to the movie that you liked. If that makes sense. This is just an example. Let's say I said, if you liked Halloween, watch Friday the 13th. That's basically what this is going to be. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope it's fun. And I picked 8 different picks here. A lot of them are more modern movies just because, I don't know. I like to show love to the newer horrors because people say that new horror is unoriginal and boring. I agree. But there's some good ones out there that I want to recommend. Starting off with 2 that have come out this decade. One being my favorite horror movie of last year, which is When Evil Lurks. A very, very, very brutal Argentinian movie about these demon possession and stuff like that most horror fans have seen because it is freely available on Shudder and it got a lot of buzz when it came out. Another thing that's also available on Shudder and gave me and when I was watching When Evil Lurks, I got a lot of the same vibes that this movie had. And I think that it's severely underrated. It doesn't get talked about enough, and I loved it. And that is The Dark and the Wicked. This was a Shudder movie that released during the pandemic that is about this girl and her brother who go back to visit their mom. And some shit goes down, and it messes with your head. There's some very brutal and disturbing scenes and moments, and there's one scene that involves the brother that's very disturbing and sad in a way. But I just think everything that this movie did, it did damn good. It's made by the same director that did the original The Strangers back in 2008. Just check it out, please. Just check it out. Very similar to When Evil Lurks, in my opinion. Definitely has the same vibes because it's going to have you audibly gasp several times, just like how When Evil Lurks did with most people. So, if you liked When Evil Lurks, check out The Dark and the Wicked. Next up is also one that just recently came out and is also available on Shudder, and that is Late Night with the Devil, which I had the honor of seeing in theaters, which was incredible. And while I was watching this movie, I also thought of another quote-unquote movie. Now, this one I'm about to talk about aired on TV in Britain on the BBC network. And it was basically disguised as a real news broadcast Halloween special. And I'm talking about Ghost Watch. Everybody was tuning in on their TVs on Halloween night to watch this program that they thought was live. They thought it was just a Halloween special on this news program. Well, the whole thing was scripted, and it was all basically a movie. And it's very effective. All the actors are actual broadcast people that are on the BBC network. Just can't imagine being in their shoes and not knowing that this movie is staged and watching it on live TV. And it is extremely similar to Late Night with the Devil. It's almost uncanny to a sense. And I just rewatched Ghost Watch recently, and I just think it's such a phenomenal movie. It's one of the best paranormal films I've ever seen. It probably is my favorite, along with Late Night with the Devil, because that one was also incredible. And it's just a unique movie. It's still unique, and it was incredibly ahead of its time. And back then, I don't think there was anything else like it. Now we're getting something like Late Night with the Devil, which basically takes that formula of Ghost Watch and makes it a still low-budget movie, but more widely received. So please, if you guys liked Late Night with the Devil, check out Ghost Watch. It's also on Shudder. Next up, I'm going to be talking about the classic horror film that everybody knows, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, obviously, there's been movies that have kind of blatantly ripped off Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was such a staple. It still is a staple, and a lot of horror directors and films would not be a thing if this film did not exist. And that, there's no doubt about that. There's this new recent movie that got some buzz, And it's actually a Tubi original, which might scare people because Tubi is not known to have good originals at all. And trust me, I was on the same concern that you guys are. But I heard all the buzz, so I checked it out. And that film that I'm talking about is called Low Lives. I can't say much about this movie because there is a twist that happens about 10 minutes in that basically sets the tone of the whole entire movie. So I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to tell you guys that Low Lives is definitely worth your watch and gives off similar vibes as the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or any Texas Chainsaw Massacre at that point, because you have the family dynamic and you could probably connect the dots from there on. But I don't want to say too much about it because, again, it's a movie that's very easy to spoil. If you guys like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, check out Low Lives, available now on Tubi. Next up, I'm going to be talking about my favorite horror film of this decade so far, which is Barbarian. I've said that several times now on this channel. I really do think Barbarian is a perfect movie. I love it to death, and it's one of the rare, since then I've had this occurrence, but this was the first time where I've watched a movie and it completely subverted everything that I was predicting and thinking was going to happen, and it just swerves you to a completely different direction and never goes off track. It's set up as a million different things, and I just think Barbarian's incredible. But if you've seen Barbarian and you liked it, I really do recommend Cobweb, which came out last year. It wasn't a huge movie with a bunch of buzz like Barbarian was, because that one did get quite a lot of buzz when it came out. Cobweb is a very independent movie. I'm not sure how lower budget it is, but it does the same thing that Barbarian does, and it also does a very good job. Well, you get this concept that's kind of generic. You've seen it before, but then it completely swerves and does something different, and it's very good. I loved Cobweb, and like Barbarian, it seems to be very divisive. I've noticed with Barbarian, it's either love or hate, and I'm seeing the same things about Cobweb. I really do think Cobweb is worth a watch, so I would say if you like Barbarian, you're most likely going to like Cobweb. Please check it out. Next up, I want to talk about a movie that came out earlier this year called Lisa Frankenstein. It got some buzz. It got pretty popular, and people are considering it like a cult classic, which I do agree. It's already a cult classic, which is very crazy that they were able to do that. Now, a movie that it kind of reminded me of was this horror comedy from the early 90s called Frankenhooker, which I know sounds stupid. Trust me, I thought it sounded stupid until people were actually praising it, so I checked it out, and it is a blast. It's one of the best horror comedies I've ever seen. It's as simple as that. Basically, it's about this guy whose girlfriend gets killed by a lawnmower, and he really misses her. So what he does is he goes out and kills a bunch of hookers and rebuilds her body with the pieces of the hookers, and puts her head on it. It's very comedic, it's very funny, it's very campy, and I just love Frankenhooker to death. It's another one of those movies that subvert your expectations because the title alone makes you think that it's going to be a very stupid movie. Like, very dumb. Like, not funny, just dumb. Frank Henenlotter, the director, is one of my favorite directors of all time. I've seen pretty much all of his movies, I think besides one. Basket Case, Brain Damage, and Frankenhooker. They're all phenomenal movies. But there's some days where I will say that Frankenhooker is my favorite. Maybe not the best, but my favorite. If you have seen Lisa Frankenstein and you enjoyed it, check out Frankenhooker. It has that same Frankenstein, obviously, energy to it. I do think Frankenhooker's a lot more obnoxious, so that you might have to get used to, but I still highly recommend it. Next up, I wanted to talk about Scream. You know, Scream, people love Scream. It was a hit from the start, and it's a lot of people's favorite movie of all time, even people who aren't really huge into horror. Now, also during the 90s, a lot of movies copied Scream. You got movies like Urban Legend and Valentine, and even the Halloween franchise ripped off Scream with H2O. Now, one of the better rip-offs to come out actually came out after the 90s in the year 2000. And I'm talking about Cherry Falls. It stars Brittany Murphy, I think is her name, the one that passed away. And it's a high school slasher movie where these kids start dying, and it actually put like a message about like not sexuality, but kind of there's this whole thing where the killer's only killing virgins, which again probably sounds stupid, but it's hard to even explain it. They do a lot of cool messages and cool themes in here that's very unique for a slasher. And I just thought it was really fun, and the twist is amazing. The twist is a little predictable, but the motive is really unique and very well structured. So I highly recommend Cherry Falls. I think it's not talked about nearly enough. It's one of the better Scream ripoffs that I've seen. I believe Scream Factory put it out, so I'm sure you can find the Blu-ray for pretty cheap on Amazon. I do highly recommend it. I had a lot of fun with that movie. Next up, I wanted to talk about the movie May from 2002. This is kind of a cult hit at this point. I heard a lot about it, and I always saw the cover art with the girl with the scissors. May is basically about this awkward, weird girl who works as a vet, and she had a weird family, and she's just very weird, you know. She's basically made fun of by her whole town, her whole neighborhood. And eventually, the whole movie is a character study, basically, because you're slowly watching her lose her sanity. And eventually, she snaps. And I absolutely love movies like that. And another movie like that that's actually from the 80s is a movie I covered on the channel called Fade to Black, which is easily one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and I do think it's severely underrated. And it's about this kid who's obsessed with movies, and he like the 50s mob movies, and he's just obsessed with them. To the point where he starts losing his mind because everyone's telling him to stop watching movies and to get a real job and get a real life and everything. And he starts to take the personas of these movie characters that he loves, and he starts killing people. Dennis Christopher, I believe, is the guy's name who's in the lead. He was in the It miniseries. He played Eddie. He played Eddie, I think. I love him, and he was amazing in this movie. Like, he's just great. And it's one of those movies where you're watching this guy kill people, but you feel so bad for him because he couldn't take it anymore. A lot like May, to that standpoint, because May was getting picked on, obviously, and she was getting picked on until she snapped. And it's along the same lines as Fade to Black. So if you guys like the movie May, please check out Fade to Black. I think it's an incredible character study, and it's one of the best movies I've seen where it follows somebody slowly losing their mind. I highly recommend Fade to Black. The last one I want to talk about is one of the more classic, probably the most classic horror movie of all time, John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, there's this movie that isn't completely like The Thing, but follows the same sort of theme. Obviously, The Thing is about this alien creature thing that imposters, it makes itself look like the other members, so that you never know who's a thing and who's not. There's this movie called The Hidden from the 80s that I absolutely love. That's pretty much, I think it takes place in LA. Imagine The Thing in LA. You have these weird people that one day this old man just starts killing a bunch of people, and he's just causing havoc in this city, right? And then later on in the day, a different person is doing it. And very early on, it's not a spoiler, you find out that it's this organism that's basically cloning itself. It's swapping body to body and just doing crime. And you follow this cop and his partner. This cop and his partner, and they're basically trying to stop this guy. It's very entertaining. It's very well written. It's a very fun movie. It has 80s written all over it, and I love it. And it's directed by in my opinion, one of the most underrated horror directors, underappreciated horror directors, Jack Shoulder, who did Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 and Alone in the Dark, two of some of my favorite horror movies of all time. Alone in the Dark is way up there. I love that movie. I adore it. I really think you guys should watch The Hidden. It's similar to The Thing in ways, but it's still very unique and stands on its own. So I would say if you guys like The Thing, check out The Hidden. And that was my video of, if you like this, watch this. I thought it would be fun, kind of talking about two movies that have sort of similarities while also recommending movies at the same time. I just thought it was a really fun concept. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and turn on that bell. Join my Discord server in the description below, just to, talk to me, have fun, chat. Also, follow my Instagram at ianlives_. Follow my Letterboxd at wehateian, and follow my TikTok at ianlives_. And I love you guys, man. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.